Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kyle, and if you saw the last episode of our 3800 series, then you know that I got the engine inside of this car. So that means we're done, right? Wrong. So the engine is in the car, but we still have our work cut out for us. We have to install literally everything onto this engine. I just bolted it in the last episode, and I've not hooked up any of the lines or anything. So we have to tackle that today. Since we have a ton of stuff to do, I think I'm going to start with the coolant system. I already have my heater hoses attached to the car side. I have a 3/4 inch line right here and a 5/8 right here. The 3/4 inch is going to attach to this elbow, and the 5/8 is going to go down into a T into this coolant line right here. But I'm not going to install those yet. I'm going to install the coolant lines, and that is what these are over here. So these are the lines that we're going to be using for our swap. This is Daco 71082. This is the driver's side coolant line, I believe. And this one is Daco 71030. This is the passenger line. And over here, I have this, which is going to be what I'm going to fill my coolant with. This is just going to go in line on this hose. And then this is just a T that is going to go in line with this line, which is going to give us the second port to our heater core. All right, I don't know how easily you guys are going to be able to see this, but I have the first coolant line just mocked up right here. This almost 45-degree bend right here is what I'm using on top. It seems to fit really good, and then it lines up really nicely on the bottom. And something I'm going to do is I have marks here on the top and the bottom, and I'm actually going to be cutting this line. I'm cutting off this little portion on the bottom where there's a little bit of a bump. I'm cutting it here because I can slide it up farther and get it to move just a little bit farther away from the transmission, more like factory, which I like. And then up here, I am going to cut right here so I can add that inline coolant fill, so then I can fill up my coolant. So let's go ahead and do that. We got our first coolant hose installed. You can see it right here. It's fitting really nicely. On the other side, it's right down here. It's not touching the cradle, and it is fitting great. This one is a pretty tight fit in there. I had to use all of these extensions to be able to reach the hose clamp, but it's on and tight. Okay guys, I just finished up my second coolant hose, and I'll show you guys how I did that. So inside of here, this is my coolant hose. I took that original hose and ended up cutting it right here. I have it teed off here, and this is where the heater core hose goes, and this goes right up into the water pump, and this comes right down and attaches to the coolant hose. It's nice and out of the way, and it's pretty securely mounted, so hopefully that'll be fine. That heater core line is attached. So I'm realizing very quickly that this is not as straightforward as I thought, because this engine does not belong in this car, and all of these things I have to try and make fit are now in the way of where things that are supposed to be in the car go. Like my shift cable right here, I have loosely installed, but it's really tight because it's hitting on this lift point back here, and it's also resting on top of the coolant hose, but that's, that's an issue. And down here, I'm trying to route my select cable along with my throttle cable, and I need to figure out how I can route all of those because they're getting intertwined with the wiring harness too. So it's just a whole bunch of messing around to try and make stuff work, but I think if we keep doing it, we're going to make some progress. So we just got to keep doing this. So right now I have my throttle cable bracket inside of the vise. Now the stock Fiero throttle cable does not fit inside of this bracket, so I am taking a file and I'm going to try and file this down so I can make it fit. so close. Yes, finally. All right, guys, so I'm working on my throttle cable right now, and it is in the bracket. The bracket's bolted on. I don't know the best way of retaining it in there. It is tight, but I don't really want to take a chance of it popping out, so I did put a zip tie around here to kind of just hold it in place as well, and it's pretty tight. The entire car moves when I shake it, but I know it's probably not the best way, but it's going to work for right now. Now I'm moving on to my cable end, and you can see I have a little dot right here, and I need to drill a hole. You have to make sure that you can go full throttle, so you can have the cable pull it all the way to full throttle, and you can also have it come all the way down to idle. And for me, it was coming out to right about here, so I'm going to drill a small hole in there, and then I have a nut and a bolt that's going to hold my cable to the throttle body. I don't really know which way I should install this, if I should do it like this or have the nut facing out, so I'm just going to have the nut facing in for now, I guess. But it's going to look something like this, with this going in, and I think it should be good. All right, that's tightened on. Let's see how that works. Let's see if I can rev it from in the car. So I'm going to try full throttle. That should be full throttle. That should be closed. Full throttle, closed. Full throttle, and closed. It feels good from in the car. So I have one shift cable in place. I'm going to install my slave cylinder and my other shift cable. So I'm going to mount these relays just in the factory position where the old ones would be. I don't know if you can see them, but these are the original ones right here. I put them on the hinge. Originally, they would go on the firewall, where I am putting these ones. Both shifter cables are installed, and so is the slave. Moving on next, I'm going to install my battery cables. Now, I tried the factory Fiero cables, and I think they're just too short. That's not going to work. Maybe you can get them to work, but I couldn't. So I got these from the parts store. Now, I think that these are going to work fine. I tried to look up on some forums to see what people used, and I found this part number, and this is what I ended up getting. It's 45115 for the positive and 45116 for the negative. Now, I don't know if these are going to work yet, so I'm going to try them out, and we'll see if they work. All right, I think I have something figured out for the battery cables. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying it's probably not the best way to do it. So these are the cables right here. I have them routed up to the battery tray up there. Then they come down here underneath the car. Both cables come out right here under the AC compressor. The positive goes right into the starter, which is fine out of the way of stuff. And the negative, since it is a bit longer, I have the negative coming over here, and then I drilled a bunch of holes in this heat shield where I can zip tie it up like this and out of the way. And it comes over here and goes right onto the stud on the bell housing. Now, obviously, yes, it is not the best way to do it, but I think it's going to work. Now the stock Fiero battery cables run another wire off of the terminal. And these already have a wire that's coming off the terminal, which makes it so much easier. So I just went ahead and cut off the ring terminal from the Fiero battery cable, and it fits right inside of here. Positive one's gonna go right to the junction box, and the negative is gonna get crimped on and just go to a ground on the body, so probably the deck lid hinge, which is where I had it on the 2.8. And with these extra wires on, that completes our battery cables. We just have to connect them now. So for my coil pack setup, I put them down here behind the battery tray. Now it was a pretty tight fit in there, but as you can see, they're nice and tucked away in there, and I have the wires all ran, and you can't even see them from on top of the engine. I have these ones ran out to the firewall and over along the frame rail down there. They go underneath the battery tray and plug right in. And then these ones over here go straight along the firewall and just cut over and plug in. I'm pretty happy with that. It's nice and it's tucked completely out of the way. And I did not have to lengthen my ICM harness, which is really nice. All right, we're gonna move on and work on the fuel system for the swap. Now for this, we need to replace the fuel pump, which is why I have the tank out right here. And then we need to make lines to run up to the fuel rail. So right here is the stock Fiero sending unit and fuel pump. And the one that I'm using for the swap is this guy right here. Part number is EP381. It's an AC Delco. And this is a drop-in pump that should be able to just fit exactly how the factory one does and work with our swap. So let's just go ahead and take apart the fuel pump and get it out of here. All right, old fuel pump is removed. So the fuel pump does come with O-rings, a gasket for the bottom, and new fuel line, and even hose clamps and this sock. So I'm going to put this on here now, hopefully. All right, guys, you can see our new pump next to our original pump, and these things look basically identical. The connectors are the same, the line size is the same, so this should be able to drop right into our sending unit. All right, I think first we're gonna slide the line onto the top, and then this gets pushed over this, just like that. All right, cool. Oh, I almost forgot. Should probably plug in the fuel pump. That'd probably be smart. All right, sending unit is back in the tank. Now we can get this thing back into the car. All right, the fuel tank is back in. I have the fittings hooked up for the filler neck. Now we need to make our fuel lines to go to the 3800. So here's everything that I'm using for my fuel lines. I have 3/8 high pressure line that I'm gonna be running. Then I have more fittings. These ones are going to go into the fuel rail. They are a factory style that goes to an AN fitting. And then these are 45s that go from an AN into a 3/8 barb. So then they will be able to go onto our fuel line. I have 2 of those. And then for our return, I also have a 3/8 to 3/8 barb fitting. This is just gonna let me plug in the return line to the existing soft line in the car. First, I'm gonna start on my return line. So I'm just going to try and shove this barb fitting as far into here as I can. I did get these high pressure fuel line hose clamps that are supposed to be pretty good. So I'm going to be trying to use those on every connection on the fuel system. Okay, now we can attach our 3/8 line. Return line is all connected here. Now I just have to run this whole spool up to the top of the car. So the return line is ran up to the top of the car, and I wonder if we can run the pressure side down from the top. Might make it a little easier. So I forgot to mention a little earlier, I also got this fitting right here, which goes into the fuel filter and then is a 3/8 barb. So then our line can just go right on there like that. I'm gonna put 2 on because, I don't know, gives me more peace of mind. I know that don't really need to, but I'm just going to. Let's try and get these lines hooked up here. So here's the return. Cool. All right, there's one fuel line done with our AN fitting now. The smaller line on the fuel rail is the return. So I got my smaller fitting here, threads in, and this should just push right into there. That all tightened up, should be able to just push this right onto here. Just like that. Our return line is finished. Now we're gonna do the same for the pressure side. Cut it right here. Just got a thread on the fuel rail connector. That's tight. Now we should be able to just plug this right onto the pressure side. Well, with our fuel lines hooked up, I think that's pretty much everything hooked up on this engine. So I think we could do a test start maybe. I'm gonna go over here and just double check to make sure everything is plugged in and everything is plugged and whatever is needed to be done is done. And then I think I want to try and start this thing. But here's how everything is looking so far. I am extremely happy with it, and I really want to test start this thing. I'm gonna crank it down. Got it. So the initial startup did not go exactly as planned. I think I'm having issues with my neutral safety, or well, lack thereof, because I don't have any kind of neutral safety switch. My car is a manual, but it used to be an automatic, so the interior harness and the entire car body harness is for an automatic. I kept that, and I actually kept the auto engine harness too, and I modified that when I did the manual swap, but I never modified the body harness. And this harness that I have is for a 5-speed. So I'm hoping that I can just swap some of these pinouts and it'll work, but I don't know. We're gonna have to see. All right, looking at my 2.8 with the auto harness, this is the C500, and pin A4 is the solenoid control. And if we look here, A4 is this big yellow wire, and that's this big pin that is close to the bolt. Now let's look at the C500 that is currently in the car. If we look at A4, which is this spot, there is no pin there. So I think that the car is sending the power to A4 and it's not going anywhere because there is no pin in A4 on this to receive it. And on a manual harness, which this C500 is made for a manual Fiero, E2 is the starter solenoid signal, which E2 is this purple wire that's right here. I am going to use this depinning tool and find one where I can basically reach in there and pop it out. So we need E2, which is this guy. So we can just reach in there and push in the tab. There we go, just released. So now we can pop this guy right out the back like that. All right, let's slide this one into A4. Let's see if we can hear it click. Yep, I don't know if you guys heard that, but it just clicked into place. Now I'm going to take the white connector, slide it back in, and lock everything in place. Cool. Let's give that a try and see if it works.
It's a good sign.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to try it. Okay, so the car kind of starts, but the only issue is that it wants to go full throttle all the time. After talking online to some people, a lot of people are pointing towards vacuum leak or a stuck IAC or things like that. And I think the first thing I'm going to tackle is redoing my vacuum lines because I kind of moved the map sensor to the back and did a few other weird things that I thought would work, but I might be wrong with that. So I'm going to go and redo some of the vacuum system and see if that makes a difference. I ripped out all of my old vacuum stuff that was along the back here. I have my map sensor just put right here. That runs to a T under the snout, runs up to the fuel pressure regulator. I capped off this back fitting. I don't know if this is the boost bypass or what it is, but that's capped off. The other end of that runs into this thing, and then that goes into the top of the snout. Big one goes to my booster, and then this one is capped off as well. And then I unplugged my evap over there and plugged the port on the throttle body. So let's see if this makes a difference. Okay, attempt number 2. So upon further inspection, looking at this diagram that shows where you're supposed to drill the hole for the throttle cable, looking at my throttle body, this looks extremely bent out of shape, which is hitting the throttle body, and I think it's not letting it close all the way. Wide open throttle, and then it catches right here. And I always thought that was completely closed, but looking at the picture, it looks pretty wrong. And that would explain why this bolt is so much farther back than on the diagram. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and bend this back and see if that makes a difference. Probably hook my booster up. Attempt number 3. So now that the car runs, which is awesome, I am going to fill it up with coolant now, and I have a lot of stuff that I need to button up. And I'm going to fill it up with coolant first, so then when I get under the car, if it's leaking at any of the coolant joints, I can see that. But I want to be able to run this for a little bit longer, so I want to put some coolant in it and hopefully be able to burp the system and make it not overheat. All right, guys, so I just got my heat shield in, and that's right here. I was able to use that and nothing's really in the way. And this cable that I have zip tied right to that is my ground cable. If you guys remember, that was a little bit long. So I zip tied it to the heat shield just to get it a little bit out of the way. And here's the bottom side of the motor. So the starter wire right here was a little long, so I have it just looped around right here for now. Over here I have another loop. This is for the air conditioning line, but I don't have AC right now, so I just have that up and out of the way. And I'm trying to just get everything up and out of the way from all moving parts and hot parts. So I think this is looking pretty good. And after this, we can be able to start the car and actually have it run for a little longer. I'm moving inside of the car now to try and focus on the wiring in here. Now, here's my computer. I have it just sitting here right now, but I do need to mount it. The Fiero computer was mounted right here onto the firewall, and I would like to keep the 3800 computer in the same spot that the Fiero one was. So I think I'm going to mount it something like this. I think that's going to clear the console, and it is going to fit the best. Computer's mounted pretty solid. I'm pretty happy with that. And now I'm going to go through and plug this hole in the firewall where all the wires come through. So this in my hands right here is the factory pass-through off of the Fiero. Now you can use this. If you heat it up, you can actually pry this thing apart and you can take it off of your wiring harness. And I'm going to try and use it to seal up this hole on the firewall. I did make a few modifications to this to make it fit. I really took out a lot of material off of the gray piece on this front one right here, and I also took off some material on the inside of the gray piece as well. But now, once it's all together, it has a nice opening. I think that I'll be able to fit the harness through here. All right, you see I have the bulkhead in here, and now I think I can use the retainer and kind of secure it in place just like that. And I believe that this would be able to just route right down the side like this, and that should be nice and secure, and we should be able to put the console on over this. And I mean, that is almost everything. I mean, if you look in here, we have everything all tucked away. I think it's looking pretty nice. Everything back there is all out of the way and tied down. We made a ton of progress to this thing. So I went ahead and moved the evap down here for the air intake. I was test fitting a little bit of the intake stuff. That's going to be done at a later date, but this thing is looking good. It's crazy to think that 2 weeks ago, this thing was a running and driving 2.8, and now it's a running 3.8, which is pretty sick. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. In the next one, we're going to work on a few of the small things we need to do to this. We're going to make an exhaust system, we're going to make the air intake system, and button up a few other small things with this. But we made a ton of progress in this episode. I'd like to thank you all for the support on this swap and this series, and I hope to see you in the next episode. See you later.